You can call Yasser Qadi, you can call Nihad Awad, but they won't tell you the truth about jihad. For that you need David Wood. He will tell you all he should, then you'll know all that there is, all about this jihad biz. Ladies and gentlemen, it's once again...
Hey, Robert, your voice went away.
Yikes. Where did it go? Is it back? My voice says here it works. Can you not hear me? Hello? I don't know what to say about this, ladies and gentlemen. Apparently I'm not being heard. Can anybody hear me? And nobody's saying anything there either. Well, I don't know.
Oh, yes. Nope, that was on my end, sir. That was on my end. I apologize.
Okay. Once again, technical difficulties. This would not be This Week in Jihad without technical difficulties, ladies and gentlemen. So, anyway, maybe you just didn't want to hear the poem, David. Maybe that was it.
Wait, did you do a poem?
Yes, sir. Do I have to? Should I do it again?
Yeah,
I have to do it again. All right, because you're in this one.
That's it. That's the only reason I show up.
You're totally in this one. You can call Yasser Qadi, you can call Nihad Awad, but they won't tell you the truth about jihad. For that you need David Wood. He will tell you all he should. Then you'll know all that there is, all about the jihad biz. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. That's it for this week. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. We appreciate your being with us for this week's episode. A little bit delayed, but you're going to get a full week of jihad and a full week of jihad next week, should we have to do it again, because I'm going to go from Wednesday to Wednesday as if it were the ordinary time for this smash hit program. We got quite a lot of stuff here, David. We've got Muslims being Muslims. We've got jihadis being jihadis. We've got, of course, the ever-popular women's section. We've got the stupid infidels section, which is always heavily populated. Shall we go start with the stupid infidels?
Your show, sir.
Why not? Okay, let's start with the National Security Advisor of India, Ajit Doval. Ajit, not Ijit, but what he said was, extremism and terrorism are against the very meaning of Islam, because Islam means peace and well-being.
It's like four straight false claims, right? It's like,
yes.
It's like if you were making four claims, just by luck you should get one or two of them right. That was all complete false. Doesn't mean peace. Doesn't mean well-being. Doesn't condemn terrorism. Muhammad said he'd been made victorious with terror.
Yep. But this man is the National Security Advisor of India, Ajit Doval. Sorry, Ajit.
India. Well, I guess India is safe now because it's not like they've had to deal with terrorists ever.
That's right. There's no terrorism in India. Actually, I got quite a lot of stories out of India this week, as it happens. Meanwhile, over in Germany, Sergeant Schultz, who is now Chancellor Schultz, has declared that he is going to, what is it now? He's going to promote the teaching of Islam in the public school systems.
Nice.
And to that I have to ask, what could possibly go wrong? But clearly...
Now, what's funny is, if you said, hey, we want to teach kids about Islam, I'd be like, amen. Just get someone who's honest, do the curriculum. But that's not how it will be. Whatever their country's version of care is, will decide the curriculum. And it will be total, utter nonsense designed to keep people in the dark about everything that's going on all around them. Because I don't know if you know this, Robert, but Germany's been on the receiving end of quite a few terrorist attacks over the past few years.
You don't mean it.
Yeah, and if you don't catch the kids while they're young to brainwash them into thinking it's all a misunderstanding, then they might grow up and start thinking that there's a problem with all these jihadis trying to slaughter them in the name of Allah.
So I tell you, David, ladies and gentlemen, I have not asked David Wood if I could do this, but I'm just going to go ahead. I'm going to volunteer. Chancellor Schultz, I know you're watching tonight. David and I hereby volunteer to teach about Islam in the Hamburg public school system.
We'll do it. We'll design the entire curriculum. And guess what? We will not say anything. Not one solitary word that does not come from Islam's most trusted sources and commentaries.
That's right.
Not one. Everything will come directly from the sources.
It's good. It'll be a tissue of quotes, a string of quotes. We will not add the slightest editorial or explanatory material. Not a single bit. So, Chancellor Schultz, give us a call. You have my number, I know. Now, also in Germany, we have, what is this clown's name? Abdi. Abdi R. They don't give the last names in the German news reports. And he murdered a man in a pizzeria in Neustadt am Rubenberger in Hanover. Ja.
Du hast recht.
He went to get the pizza, ja, und there was someone in the pizza joint insulting Islam, and he stabbed him to death with a bread knife. With a bread knife, he stabbed him. I don't know how, but where did he stab him, by the way, David?
Let's see. Möchtest du ins Kino gehen? Möchtest du ins Pizzeria gehen? Hier.
Ja. Das ist wer, ja. And so he is, even though he explained that the victim, a Yazidi, had insulted his religion, nonetheless, Abdi is going to the psych ward because no one is, of course, ever a jihadi. He just must be crazy to think that he should kill someone and stab him in the neck for insulting Islam.
Did you say Yazidi?
Yazidi, yeah. The victim was a Yazidi.
Yeah, Robert, if there's anyone on the planet right now that deserves to be able to say something about Muhammad, the Quran, Islam, whatever, wouldn't it be the Yazidis? I mean, I would put that. I mean, you've had tons of other groups over the centuries who've been violently oppressed and attacked, but in the name of Allah. But I mean, Yazidis were massively on the receiving end of that. I mean, just showing up, killing the men, taking the women and girls, turning them into sex slaves for these, brothels that are meant to be like Islamic paradise and so on. And then some of the Yazidis got out of there when they could. They end up in places like the U.S. or Germany. And then you got another guy who comes along, and a Yazidi dares criticize the religion that did all this to his people. And yeah, you got to put a knife in his neck at the pizzeria.
A bread knife yet.
Bread knife.
A bread knife. Anyway, so much for Abdi R. Now, yes.
Well, I'm sure you've seen these stories where, even the women who were sex slaves, and then after they were liberated, went to places like Canada and so on. There are Muslim men who track them online.
Oh, yeah.
to constantly harass them and say that's going to happen again, and asking them questions about when they were raped and did they like it and stuff like that. It's just sick. I mean, sick stuff. But notice it's always the same principle. It's we get to horribly oppress, murder, torture, rape, mock, whatever but you had better have nothing but respect in return for our religion.
That's it. That's the way it works. The people, the religion, rather, least deserving of respect is the one that demands that the respect be accorded to it for no reason whatsoever. All right, in England, we have the Farouk Azam Mosque and Islamic Centre in Bowesfield Lane, Parkfield, Stockton. And they have asked that they be given permission to, I believe it's broadcast the call to prayer once a week, Allahu Akbar and all that. And actually, this was approved. Councillor Louise Baldock said it'll bring much pleasure to the Muslim community. The majority of the objections seem to be from people who object to the Muslim faith. Some of the comments have been racist in nature. And so, because the objections were all racist, this was approved. And so the Farooq-e-Azam Mosque and Islamic Center in Parkfield, Stockton, will actually be broadcasting the call to prayer. And it's only a matter of time, David, I believe, until the BBC itself is broadcasting it 5 times a day, really.
Nice. It is interesting, though, that you can reject anything by calling it racist, but then anything you don't like or disagree with, you call it racist. In other words, if I were to contact them and say, hey, I have a problem with Muhammad's claim that the most vehement in enmity towards the believers are the Jews, especially, given the climate of anti-Semitism right now. And then, of course, Muhammad saying that the end won't come. You won't be able to get your virgins until you first fight the Jews, chasing them around until they're hiding behind rocks and trees, and the rocks and trees are exposing them, calling on you to come murder them. If I were to say, hey, I got a problem with that, the response would be, you must not like them because they're brown. See, this is a racist concern. It's a racist issue. It's like, wait a minute, you're saying kill all the Jews. That's the racist part. It's like, what? My goodness, you can't make a... Yeah, no, what do you call them? Stupid infidels.
Yeah, this is the stupid infidels section. And so, Councillor Louise Baldock, representing Parkfield and Oxbridge, concluded by saying, I'm proud that Stockton is not a racist town. And I indeed share her joy in this, really.
Well, yeah, I'm predicting her not racist town will be awfully anti-Semitic here in the very near future.
Indeed. And they won't have any idea why.
It'll be a great mystery.
Yes, they'll wonder why. How is it that the far right has gained so much influence in our marvelous little city? Really. All right. A very amusing story, really, out of the UN, David. At the UN Office for Human Rights spokeswoman Ravina Shamdasani said that she was dismayed that the Taliban had whipped a woman in public. And Zabiullah Mujahid, the longtime Taliban spokesman, said in response that for the UN to criticize the Taliban carrying out public whippings was an insult to Islam.
It is.
Yes.
It is. That's what we've been telling you guys, right? It's like we've been saying for years, guys, you already agree that all of this stuff is wrong. Why do you condemn us for pointing out that it's wrong?
Exactly.
Oh, boy.
So the UN, I thought that was vastly amusing because now the UN is Islamophobic. And are they going to investigate themselves? Are they going to condemn themselves? It's a bit of a sticky wicket,
They're racists against beating women into submission.
That's it, man. Meanwhile, also in the Sceptred Isle, in perfidious Albion, in the land of Shakespeare, you may have seen a few months ago, we may have even mentioned it on the show a few months ago, that there was a group of Palestinian Muslims in a car convoy, and they were going down the street screaming things that I cannot repeat because this is a family program, but also things like they were going to rape the daughters of the Jews and so on. And all charges have been dropped against them because you know that it would be Islamophobic to prosecute such people.
Mm-hmm. It is an interesting, Robert, I mean, this is really, really like just getting to see how this eventually, inevitably unfolds. For years and years, all we did in response to every terrorist attack was point out how the Muslim sources call for this. When it's women being beaten or apostates being killed or whatever, we point to the Muslim sources to show where these guys are getting this. And every single step of the way, we're called racists and Islamophobes for pointing it out. And now all these organizations and politicians and so on are seeing it in front of them. And what do you say? If you say it's wrong, you're in Islam. You're in the same, but you're saying the same thing we were saying. We were just saying it 15 years ago, right?
Yeah,
stuff.
Yeah, and you know the biggest place where that's happening is with, of course, the World Cup, and they're
World
suddenly
Cup?
seeing
What's that?
well, you know, they call it football, but we've been through that. The world seems to have assumed that Qatar was going to be some kind of woke paradise for the LGBT agenda and everything else, and suddenly they're shocked that Qatar is enforcing Sharia. And so sure, they'll take $75 million from Budweiser to be the official beer of the World Cup and then not let them sell it. And
It's funny because, I mean, if you've listened to politicians and the media for the past 2 decades, you'd conclude that it's going to be a leftist woke paradise, because that's what we're told about Islam, and that's what all their alliances are in the West. They always line up with far left, and so you think, yeah, that's what it's going to be like.
Yeah, exactly. So what we have with the whole World Cup thing is the collision of the left's fantasy Islam with the real Islam, and it's a lot of fun to behold. I actually laughed out loud when I saw the video. Did you see the video, David, of Johnny Infantino? Which is a great name, really. Johnny the Baby. Johnny Infantino, who is the head of FIFA, the fake International Football Association. And he made a video at the opening of the games, and it sounded like it's a song, I think, from The Sound of Music, I think. I feel pretty, you know, and
that's a different one.
Because
so
he
pretty
said,
and witty and bright, yeah,
and he was just saying it, but I was hearing the music. I feel Qatari, I feel Arab, I feel pretty and whatever and gay, because that's what he said. I feel Qatari, I feel Arab, I feel gay.
That's in the original song, yeah.
Yeah, the gay part, but that's not what not the gay they meant. But Johnny Infantino, Johnny the Baby, was saying that in Qatar it's going to be great. We're going to have a gay old time, which means in the modern sense. Yeah. And then he was shocked that they're not so hospitable to this in Qatar. They're acting according to the principles that they have made abundantly clear, and that we have made abundantly clear all these years, and just got called Islamophobes for doing so.
Mm-hmm.
So
I have to respond real quick to a comment from Black Angel.
Okay.
Black Angel said David is meanwhile a football fan. Admit it. Yes, Black Angel, I am a fan of football, real football, not soccer. Just so I understand a lot of Americans don't even know what World Cup is. But so I'll give just a very, very quick history lesson. Years ago, Americans invented the greatest sport of all time, football. But there were kids who were too weak and frail to play football. So we also invented a game for them called soccer. It can't really consider it a sport, but at least kids get outside and get some fresh air and some sunshine and so on. So they invented this other sport called soccer for frail kids. Meanwhile, the United States is exporting great ideas to the rest of the world, and but the problem is the rest of the world by nature is frail. So they adopted soccer as their sport, but it already had a negative connotation. So they used the word football. Isn't that crazy? They use the word for the real tough sport. Meanwhile, they're playing the frail, weak sport. And
yes.
Guys, you can't do that, right? You can't take a grilled cheese sandwich and just say, "Well, I'm going to call it a steak." You can't do that. You know what I mean? So yes, I am a football fan.
It's Euro steak. It's
Euro. Look at my grilled cheese sandwich. I call it Euro steak.
That's it, man. I have a comment here that from Joanne. The song "I Feel Pretty" is from West Side Story. And of course, West Side Story is a musical devoutly to be remembered. When you're a Sunni all the way from your first jihad attack to your last dying day. Anyway, yes?
I think I used I feel pretty in one old video where I was talking about Muhammad wearing his child bride's nightie. So it's still I'm semi joking when I said that's what the sources say. It's saying that what Muhammad says that he was in Aisha's thawb, and other sources say he was in her mirt. And Muhammad used this for giving Aisha special privileges because he said, he told his other wives, I've never received revelations in any of your garments except for Aisha's. And so like the most obvious interpretation of that is like he's wearing their clothes and getting revelations only in Aisha's clothes. But Muslims will argue for different interpretation. Here the word for dress means blanket or something like that.
Yes, imagine having to be an Islamic apologist and having to cover for all this outlandish, crazy stuff. You know, well, he said blow your nose 5 times because Satan lives in the bridge of your nose because the sand gets up there in the desert, you know, and it's so uncomfortable. Anyway, okay, I have a whole section here, David, of jihadis behaving like jihadis, oddly enough. And of course, people are shocked. Shocked!
Why would they do that?
Yes, indeed. In West London, Tariq Namuz, who owns Boss Crew Barbershop. And Boss Crew Barbershop, he made some good money. And he sent £25,000 to ISIS in Syria. And he explained that he hoped that they would use the money to build incinerators like Hitler. I want to burn Christianity. We have incinerators and holocausts like Hitler. A lesson from history. That's what he said. Now, I understand. Tariq probably does not have an upper-class English accent. I just thought it might be funny to imagine him having dinner with King Charles III, really, and saying, oh yes, quite, I'd love to incinerate the Christians, you know.
No, he's probably got one of those Russell Brand accents, you know, the really annoying ones. You got like the Richard Dawkins accent, and that makes you sound smarter, and then you have, you know, the Russell Brand type, and that makes you sound dumber. I guess it's like, you know, there are places in the U.S. where you'd sound intelligent, and then they're like my hillbilly relatives, and they sound a little dumb. But can you imagine if you're like, you know, you're there and there's this barber shop, and you're like, hey man, I'd like to support the Muslim community, so I'm just going to go get my hair cut by this guy all the time. And meanwhile, he's sending the money to ISIS.
Yep.
To build incinerators.
You better hope that they don't slip and cut your neck while you're in there getting your hair trimmed.
Just think about it, right? All these people who were going and getting their hair cut were ultimately funding ISIS.
Yep, that's right. They had no idea.
Here, let me tip you £5. Oh, no problem. Straight to ISIS.
Yeah, maybe it was something like this. I want to burn Christianity. We have incinerators and holocausts like Hitler. A lesson from history. Maybe something like that. Anyway, that's what happened. That's what he said. He was very forthright. Where he got the idea that he would want to do this to the Christians was left unexplained, and I'm sure that British authorities are thoroughly baffled. Thoroughly. As to how this could have happened.
Must be insane. Send him for 2 weeks to a crazy house and then let him out because he'll tell you he's reformed.
Send him to the German crazy house. He can hang out with Abdi R, the guy who stabbed the guy in the neck with the bread knife. All right. In India, one of many stories from India this week, there was an attempted bombing. There was a man named Mohammed Sharik was traveling in an auto rickshaw with a cooker, kind of like I suspect the pressure cookers that the Boston Marathon bombers used, and it exploded in Mangaluru, injuring him and the driver. Police are treating this like an act of terror, and this Mohammed Sharik is being actually quite forthright about what he was up to. And do you know, David, who he said had inspired him to do this? Who do you think it might have been?
Donald Trump. Kanye.
Those are good guesses. You ready? You give up?
I give up.
Zakir Naik.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
Yep. As it happens, Zakir had just tweeted a few hours before a video about suicide bombing. Is suicide bombing allowed in Islam? And this is being connected to this incident, that it may be that this fellow watched this and decided to go right out and do it.
Quick comment here. Children of the Light said, David Wood, what hadith did Muhammad wear his wife's garments? Because that goes against Torah law as well. Yeah, there's a bunch of hadiths on this. Usually not translated literally, but some do. Like Aisha Bewley, in her translation of Bukhari, translates it as Muhammad was in Aisha's garment. But go to Answering Islam. So answeringislam.net. Go answeringislam.net and just go to the search and type in Muhammad woman's garments or something like that. And because there's a bunch of them. There's a bunch of them in the Muslim sources.
You know, hooray for Aisha Bewley. You know, she doesn't get the props that she should. Really, her translations all the time. She doesn't play around. She doesn't cover up. She is so much more honest than most of the translators of Hadith material. Aisha, thanks for watching, and thanks for your work. Okay, let's go to Belgium, David. In Belgium, once again, this is another story of jihadis being jihadis. Also a World Cup story. Morocco beat Belgium in the World Cup game. And in Belgium, the Moroccans went wild. They were so happy that they had beaten Belgium that they began to rampage and riot, destroying cars, destroying the Belgian flag, screaming. What were they screaming, David?
I'll go with Allahu Akbar on this one.
Once again, you got it. You were absolutely right.
You know, it's just interesting that this is kind of weird. But when you talk about jihadis going jihadis being jihadi, it reminds me of a very, just spot on something that Chris Rock said after one of those circus tigers attacked a trainer back in the day. And everyone was saying the tiger went crazy, the tiger went crazy, the tiger went crazy. And Chris Rock said, no, that tiger went tiger.
Yep.
The tiger went tiger. The tiger by nature does that, right? You had tried to train it out of that, but it didn't work, and it just showed you it's what it really is. But what a perfect parallel with jihadis, right? It's because every time a jihadi slaughters someone in the name of Allah, that poor jihadi went crazy. No, the jihadi did what jihadis do, right? It's like...
That's perfect. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. All right. In Germany also, we have more stories from Germany, yeah? Und the coronavirus, the COVID, very bad pandemic, and many people were given the COVID relief. And yes. In Germany, there was a group of people there were actually raids all over the country, and in 6 states, and apartments searched, accused people from Egypt, Tunisia, and Syria who were accused of spreading jihad material online. And it turned out that they were funding their jihad activity with the COVID relief money. Now, why is that no surprise, David?
It's about as surprising as a barber using the money to fund ISIS, right?
Yeah.
Have you noticed a pattern of because this goes all the way back to the what was that? What was it called? The Holy Land, the Holy Land.
Yeah, the Holy Land Foundation.
Yeah, it was all these charities were funneling money to Palestinian terrorists, and so yeah, no surprise there.
Indeed. So here's a good one out of France. How do you say this, David? AIX. This is a town in France. Can anybody help us? Is it just A? Is it Ace?
That's Canadian. A is Canadian, man.
Yeah.
A?
How's it going?
Maybe that's where they get it from, because they're French up there, basically.
AIX, people. There must be somebody who speaks French here.
Well, what's crazy is it could be anything, right? Because their use of language makes no sense at all. It could be like, right? Like, how are you getting that from AIX?
Yes.
Languages, man.
Like Edinburgh, which is Burgh, but that's in Scotland, so I shouldn't blame the French. All right, the A, or whatever it is, Marseille, that's Marseille.
They're saying X. People are saying X.
Is it really X?
Yeah, but like several people said X. EKX or just EX.
But then Sarah Rainey says the X is silent. X. I think you people are putting us wrong.
I think she's joking. Everyone else said X.
X. Okay, the X. I don't know. X Marseille shuttle. Sounds like it used to go to Marseille and it doesn't anymore. Anyway, that may be true. It's a 40-minute bus ride, and it's a very popular shuttle because you want to go from A or X or whatever it is in Provence to Marseille, and it carries 10 to 15,000 people every day. Not on one bus. They don't have buses that big, but on a series of buses, they carry 10 to 15,000 people a day on this thing. Anyway, so the people fill up the bus in X, going to Marseille, and their driver is playing the Qur'an over the loudspeaker on the bus.
That would be like torture, man. He should be sued for torture.
For the whole trip.
Oh, man. I've mentioned before, I did that once because this is like 10 years.
You played the Quran on a loudspeaker on a French bus?
No, it was similar to that. This was like 12 or 13 years ago, and I had a long drive, like a 5 or 6 hour drive. And so many Muslims were telling me, because they'd say the Quran is, their main argument, the Quran is so masterfully written, it could only come from Allah. And no one can make anything like this. And I'd be pointing out, this is so stupid. Look at all this. The sun sets in a muddy pool and semen is formed between the backbone and ribs. And even you guys, every time I quote the Quran to you, you say, no, it means something else. What kind of book always says the exact opposite of what it actually means? What's going on here? And they say, if you would just listen to it in Arabic, you would see how great it is. So anyway, I was on this I know I had this long trip. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to listen to the Quran in Arabic this whole trip. Yeah, it was like hour and a half. I got this horrible headache. I was like, oh my goodness, turn this off. Turn that off. Put on some Pink Floyd, and then I was good to go after a while.
So anyway, a lot of people got mad on the bus, but I doubt anything's going to happen to the guy because it would be Islamophobic.
Yeah, totally Islamophobic.
Another thing that would be Islamophobic, which comes out of the World Cup yet again in Qatar, is FIFA, the Football International Fake...
The frail International Fake Football League.
Yes, that's an extra F, but okay. Anyway, the FIFA actually asked the police in Qatar not to arrest women who report rape. FIFA actually had to ask them not to do that, specifically.
Yeah. Now, think about it, Robert. Why would that be? Why would they need to? Why would this soccer organization have to tell the local authorities, guys, while we're here, please don't arrest any women who've been raped. Don't arrest the women who've been raped. Why would they need to even tell these guys that?
Well, women are often counted as criminals if they get raped. If they don't have the 4 witnesses, which they usually don't, then their own their own accusation of rape is self-incriminating. And they have been guilty of zina, unlawful sexual activity, and consequently they have violated Islamic law. A woman's supposed to keep covered to prevent men from being tempted. If they were tempted enough to rape her anyway, it's her fault.
And guys, we're not making this up. We've seen this over and over again, not just there, but in other Muslim countries where a woman is raped. And notice it's just a sad situation, because if you've been raped in a place like Pakistan or something like that, it's in your best interest to keep your mouth shut. But rapists know that, so they know they can keep getting away with rape because the women will keep their mouths shut. Finally, you have a woman who goes to the authorities and says, this guy raped me. And they say, well, prove it. She can't prove it. It's her word versus his. And he says, what are you talking about? I didn't rape her. It was totally consensual. And they say, well, it's your word versus his. He says consensual, but you've admitted that you had sex with him, and therefore you're both charged with having sex.
This actually happened to a woman in Qatar last year who was on the World Cup organizing committee, Paula Sietekat. I remember writing about her last year because she revealed what had happened to her and then warned against anybody being Islamophobic as a result. And showing their crying need for proofreaders. Just as an aside, the Metro newspaper in Britain that carried this story about the cops having to ask the Qatar officials not to arrest rape victims says that Paula Sietekat was charged with extramarital sex. Anyway, that has something to do with the military, I guess.
What's wrong with you?
All right. Yes, it's late, ladies and gentlemen. Okay.
But isn't it interesting? I mean, these organizations like, Fifi and stuff like that, they know that this goes on there.
Oh yeah.
Right? I mean they're coming. In other words, they're making agreements and arrangements to go host the World Cup in a place where they know if a woman is raped, she'll be charged.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all right, but they got the money, so let's do it.
They knew that going in.
Mm-hmm.
And they preferred to ignore it and pretend that their rainbows and unicorns Islam was the real thing. And so people are paying for it now. All right. Here's imams being imams. Maulana Asad Kazmi of Jamia Sheikh ul Hind, in a video released by Dar ul Uloom Deoband, which is the seminary in India from which the Taliban comes. He said that it is un-Islamic to celebrate birthdays, and that those who did so were imitating the Christians. Now, why would it be bad to imitate the Christians?
Because then you're a Christian.
There you go.
The Christians are imitating the pagans, and then you'd be imitating the Christians, and therefore you're just imitating the pagans.
Yep. Another Muslim cleric, being a Muslim cleric, Maulana Sajid Rashidi, also in India. He made a warning. There's sort of an ongoing controversy. We've discussed it before, David, about the dress code in Indian schools. And there has never been any kind of headgear allowed. But now there's a lot of agitation to change the dress code to allow Muslim girls to wear hijab and so on. And Maulana Sajid Rashidi said that if the government mandates anything that is a dress code against Islam, the whole country will be on fire.
Metaphorically. Peacefully.
Indeed. In Afghanistan, the Taliban has been being the Taliban and got people together in a soccer stadium. I guess they wanted to have something there more interesting to present than the actual soccer game. So they had public floggings that we have already discussed. But it's interesting to note that the people in the soccer stadium were not flogged for playing soccer itself, although that would have been perhaps more justified. They were flogged for, let's see, adultery, robbery, and gay sex. I don't think that they were doing this during the soccer game, but at other times.
That is, that is an interesting method. You had, the people who came before you built a soccer stadium. You want a place to do your public beatings, and now you got this big stadium.
Yep.
I guess if Islam were to ever take over the U.S., you get the Superdome and things like that, and
Yep.
have all your public floggings and public beheadings there.
Yankee Stadium, public beheading, Tuesday at 8. All right, I had one queued up here that I wanted to get to. Oh yeah, in Nigeria, there was a jihad raid in the Eleme local government area of Rivers State. And one of the people who is a leader in the community there, whose name is Justice Kanikpo. Not like Justice Thomas or Justice Alito, but Justice...
I was thinking Sheriff Buford T. Justice.
Anyway, Justice Kanikpo said people are moving out of the community as a result of fear, because the herders, and those are the jihadis, always come to the area with AK-45, I think they mean 47, right? Rifle every day. So people are afraid for their lives. They have already killed 2 people. And I thought Justice Kanikpo is actually enunciating something that is larger than just this situation in Nigeria. That happened all over the world. That there would be jihadis, they would raid a community, people would leave the community out of fear. That's why Egypt and Syria and so many other countries are predominantly Muslim today. This is what happened to the non-Muslims. And people don't realize we're watching the same phenomenon happen now in Nigeria and elsewhere.
Yeah, jihad's been going on for 14 centuries. It's still the same methodology. But, this is something that is effective over generations. You know what I mean? You over, year after year, decade after decade, you're constantly pushing the line of the unbelievers further back and so on. And you just constantly expand like that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, actually, I'm finishing up a book now on the Byzantine Empire. Almost done. And this is a place that was a Christian land, a Christian empire. All of Turkey, what is now Turkey today, completely Christian. And then they started the raids and started jihad wars and pushed and pushed and pushed. And now, of course, there are hardly any Christians left there. And that's just one place, all over the world. Here's another, David. The Islamic Republic of Pakistan, 200 Christians left homeless after authorities came in and bulldozed their homes without any warning. Now, what do you bet that they're going to have Muslims move into that area?
Sounds about right. And good luck for the Christians who want to go to their Muslim judges to defend their rights. There's
no justice for them. Another story, actually out of Turkey, the foreign minister, Mevlet Cavusoglu. Now, I'm not sure if that's probably Mevlut, because it's got an umlaut over a U. So it's Mevlut Cavusoglu, but it's got little tags under the C and the S, so I don't know.
Yeah. And one, you're applying the German umlaut to
that's
to
another
Turkey
thing.
to Turkish. You can't just say, oh, those dots mean the same thing over here.
I'll tell you one thing, David. Though I'll bet that if you go back far enough in the genealogy of Mevlut Cavusoglu, you'll find some guy named Papadopoulos or something like that. But That's something. That's another story. That's happening to Turks all over. Have you seen those stories that they go to Ancestry.com and things like that, and they put in their DNA and they find out they're Greeks?
Of course, there were Greeks
Because
all over the place there in Turkey back in the day.
they converted to Islam under duress because of the Dima. But in any case, Mevlut Cavusoglu, he is acting the way a Turkish foreign minister would act. He said at the UN the other day, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, anti-Christianity, xenophobia, separatism, and extremism continue to increase everywhere. Notice they put Islamophobia, which is the most spurious of all of those, at the beginning. Islamophobia is, as we have discussed many times, a trick, because there are attacks on innocent Muslims. Those are always and in every case to be condemned. But they also use the same word for honest discussion of jihad activity. And so they're trying to shut down the honest discussion by conflating it with the violent attacks.
Yeah, something that would be fun would be like just repeating a quotation from the Muslim source, just saying, hey, Islam teaches, and then just flat out quotation or just quotation from a Muslim scholar or something like that, and being called an Islamophobe, because that would make the claim Islamophobic, you know what I mean? But it's from Muhammad.
Yep.
Like Muhammad was an Islamophobe because he says the same things about Islam that we do.
That's right. But they've been playing that game from the beginning. When the Organization of Islamic Cooperation started its International Observatory of Islamophobia, which I loved the name, you know. This was back in like 2005, and I was thinking,
they're sitting there with a telescope, right? Like,
yeah, exactly.
Found some. There's Robert. I see him.
Well, yeah, I was in their reports pretty regularly, and it was usually for quoting some Muslim cleric. And so the Muslim cleric, no problem for him. But if I quote him, that's Islamophobia. That's Islamophobia observers being Islamophobia observers. All right, we have another jihadis being jihadis story out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Bringing it all back home now, David. In Philadelphia, we have a Muslim gentleman named Ahmad Sharif, who was charged with murder after beheading his wife, or in any case, some woman who the police report, and I'm not making this up, said a 41-year-old woman was found unresponsive with her head severed in the kitchen of Ahmad Sharif's home.
So I guess
I could just see them
bending
bending over her.
We're trying to resuscitate her.
Yeah, and didn't realize. In any case,
she's not responding. Clear. This is, still not responding. And then like some rookie's like, she doesn't have a head. Like, shut up, Islamophobe. We don't talk about severed heads. We pretend they're attached.
That's the Philadelphia police.
Philadelphia way.
A neighbor said, the woman, they treat her like a slave. She runs in and out of the house barefoot. She never really goes anywhere else. She carries all of their bags in. They scream at her. Probably when they fear disobedience from her, they beat her too. Mm-hmm. New York City, keeping it home. We have a story about Sheikh Abdullah Faisal, who is actually from Jamaica, but he's on trial now in New York City. He's a convert to Islam, born Trevor William Forrest, and he has been charged with trying to recruit a woman for jihad activity, and he has been captured on video saying, "You should cut the throats of the kafirs with machetes." I don't know where he got that idea, David. Do you have any idea?
Probably you, because you say it all the time.
That's it. It's my baneful influence.
You're just quoting the Qur'an when you say it, but you still say it. So he probably gets all his information from you.
If I just wouldn't quote the Qur'an, everything would be all right.
Jihad would be gone. We wouldn't have a show.
Yeah. Out of India, Aftab Amin Poonawalla. Very famous story now. Happened, I believe we talked about it last week, that he had killed his Hindu girlfriend, cut her body into pieces, and so on. And he was questioned by police the other day, and they said, "Do you regret what you have done?" And he said, "Of course not. I'm going to get virgins in paradise now. Hurs in Jannat," he said in particular. Where did he get such an idea, David? That must be a misunderstanding of Islam.
Yeah, that's Quran and Hadith, and commentaries.
Yep.
In fact, you got to Ibn Kathir's quotations on these passages. He'll be quoting Muhammad saying that Muslim men will be able to deflower 100 virgins per day, and in Jalalain he describes how Allah miraculously restores the virgin's virginity after you've deflowered her. Because the question, is Allah just going to keep creating new virgins? No. Every time you deflower a virgin, he's going to use his miraculous power to make her a virgin over again. So you could just keep deflowering 100 virgins per day forever, and you never run out of your virgins because Allah restores the virginity. It's interesting, look, all of Allah's power, and that's what he uses it for.
Yeah, stories like that make me think of some kid, 15 years old, thinking about what would be the best thing ever. What would I want heaven really to be like? And just ends up getting into the Islamic traditions. Terrible story also out of India. We have another story of rape. A Muslim man raped a Hindu girl, not his girlfriend, raped a Hindu girl at gunpoint. But as he was in the process of the rape, his sisters were actually present and recording the rape on video, and then used the existence of the video to try to blackmail her to convert to Islam.
And that's interesting, because you've seen the videotaping tactic used over and over again. It was used a lot with Sikh girls in the UK a while back, where you get a woman or a girl to have sex, or you rape her or something like that, and you record it. And in the UK, they were actually making them become their prostitutes. It was, hey, now we have video of you having sex. You become a prostitute for us, or we're going to show this to your families. And so the girls are being put in these awful situations where some of them just become prostitutes. It became such an issue that the Sikh community had to get together and say, guys, we need to, when our daughters come back when our daughters come to us and say that, they had sex and it was filmed and stuff, we need to not be judging them or condemning them over this stuff, because Muslims are using that to turn them into prostitutes. Mm-hmm. And so it became, that's how big of an issue it became. And but that's a similar tactic that's been used all over the world. So there in India, we raped you, now convert to Islam. We're going to share this footage of you being raped.
Yep. And so the sisters, it just sounds absolutely revolting that not only is there a rape, but that the sisters are present and they're approving of this behavior. But it all makes sense within the context of Islamic morality, which so devalues the non-Muslim and considers the non-Muslim to be like a vile animal, then this kind of treatment is completely justified.
Yeah, and that's part of Islam, taking captives and raping them and so on. And your only hope for ever getting out of that situation is to convert to Islam and hope that someone decides to marry you or something like that.
Mm-hmm. All right, out of the Islamic Republic of Iran, we should check in with them. The protests are still going on, and we wish them all success. Hope that they will topple the Islamic Republic very soon. In the meantime, however, a rapper in Iran, Tumaj Salehi, has been charged with spreading corruption on earth. Well, now, what on earth is that, David?
That Is that thing in Surah 5 verse 33 where like thousands of times Western politicians and journalists quoted Surah 5 verse 32 in response to terrorist attacks, and so there would be a terrorist attack or ISIS jihadis killing Shias, and then we would all be told over and over again, no, those guys who are slaughtering people in the name of Allah, they're not Muslims, because the Quran says, they won't even give the verse, but the Quran says if anyone kills a man, it's as if he's killed all mankind. That's what Islam teaches. And then we would point out, actually, if you read what the verse says, it says this was a command that Allah revealed for the Jews, the children of Israel. And then the very next verse gives the command that's directed towards Muslims. And it specifically commands them to kill, crucify, dismember people for committing the vague crime. It doesn't say what it is. It just says for corruption in the land. And so corruption in the land, they're going to 532 saying that this is peaceful, and this exposes people who kill in the name of Allah, that they're not true Muslims, when the very next verse tells them to chop off body parts, kill, and even crucify people for the vague crime of corruption in the land. And therefore, when Muslim countries have no specific thing like apostasy that they can point a finger at you for, they just say corruption in the land, and then you're dead. And so this command that is literally the next verse after the verse that's been quoted by President Obama and so many others to show that Islam is peaceful and tolerant, is still being used to slaughter people for pretty much anything the Muslim leaders don't like.
Indeed.
That one? Is that the one you're talking about?
That's the one, man. And I think, of course, that's why they never say, well, it's chapter 5, verse 32, because somebody might take the book and look at 32 and keep reading. So it's better they just say, well, the Quran says somewhere.
And that's what, because Muslims bring that up after every single terrorist attack. Surah 5, verse 32. And every single time I go, one, please quote the entire verse for us. Then two, quote the very next verse for us. And then explain how this actually condemns violence in the name of Allah.
You got it, man. One other out of Iran, the Islamic Republic, Mojtaba Fada, the commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps, which you'll notice in the Western press is very often referred to as the Revolutionary Guards Corps or as the Iranian Revolutionary Guards Corps, and very seldom as what it really is, which is the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps. But I didn't name it, David Wood didn't name it, the Islamic Republic named it, and that's what it's called. And Mojtaba Fada is the commander in Isfahan, the wonderful ancient city of the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps. And he said, the former prime minister of the Zionist regime hoped, that is Benjamin Netanyahu, hoped that the protests in Iran would lead him to travel to Tehran. That is, that the regime would be toppled and that he would be able to go to Iran in triumph. But Allah willing, the Islamic Republic will prevail and will frog march that prime minister to Iran wearing a leash and a slave collar.
Frog march?
Yes. And I thought, I saw, yes?
Frogs don't really have normal necks that you could put a leash around, so I don't even know what he's talking about with the leash.
It's a complex image. It's complex, sophisticated imagery here. But I thought a slave collar? So they got slavery in Islam, you're saying? I thought that was Islamophobic to say.
It definitely sounded awfully Islamophobic, everything you say.
Yeah, well, that's Mojtaba Fada, the commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps in Isfahan.
Hopefully the UN starts an investigation on that guy for being an Islamophobe.
Yeah, that's needed. All right, that brings us to 60 minutes of Jihad, and that's about all that any of us need for this week. Of course, there's plenty more at jihadwatch.org, the famed website that tracks jihad activity. And
that's for the latest, most updated information. For those of you who want the history of jihad, you got to get Robert's book, the history of jihad.
That's right. Thank you, David. And you know, if you want to get why there's jihad, the critical Qur'an will explain it all for you.
With crystal clarity. And
Indeed.
guys, I don't know if you're looking around at the world, but really interesting stuff happening with Islam and how it's interacting with everything else. And it's just springing up over and over again. World Cup everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
It would be a really, really good time for people who love freedom and don't like seeing situations where women are arrested for being raped. Learn your Muslim sources. And if you want to learn this, my goodness, get the critical Quran and get the history of jihad and learn those things well.
And thank you very much, David. Thank you very much, all of you. We will be back here, God willing, Wednesday with more jihad. And it just keeps coming. And so we will keep on coming back as well. Thank you very much. And God bless and protect you all.